Well, good morning, everybody. Oh, that's great. Fantastic. Hey, my name is Brad. I'm one of the pastors here, and I'm so glad to welcome you. Welcome online, at home, wherever you are. Like Butch says, I wish that you were here because you miss out so much on the community, a part of what we are as a church, that you just can't get at home. So when you feel safe, please come back and experience all the wonder of what it means to be part of a church family. Did you see the blood donor bus out there? How many of you are giving blood? Yes, way to go. Congratulations. Fantastic. You know why? I was talking to the director last night. Christmas season, blood donations drop off because we're all busy with stuff, right? When does blood demand go up? At Christmas. Because there's more people active on the roads and things like tornadoes. Tragic, that take the lives of so many. It's needed. You're contributing to saving lives, so thank you for those of you that are participating in that. You still can sign up, by the way. You still can go over and give blood. If you're at home, not sure what to tell you, maybe get a box cutter, garden hose, and baggie, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what you do. See, you miss out on something if you're not here, right? Yeah, you do. Okay, so original Christmas. We started this last week with the idea that what if we went back a little ways and looked at what the original intent of Christmas might be. And we looked at a story of Ahaz, and I want to pick that up a little bit. We didn't finish it last week, if you didn't notice. But here's what I want to start with. In 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower was being interviewed and being asked about the challenges that he faced in his presidency. And some of the challenges that he faced was the Cold War was active and alive, and he just didn't seem to be able to he was grappling with it, but didn't seem to find solutions for it. The farmers in America were upset with him because they didn't feel his support. His own party, Republican Party, was upset because he seemed to be kind of anchored in the old guard, the old way of doing it, and just a variety of things that were going on in his presidency that were troubling for him. And so he's asked one day, how do you deal with these problems you have? And he said this, and you will probably have heard it before. He said, well, I have two kinds of problems. I have urgent problems and important problems. And the urgent problems seldom are important, and the important problems are never urgent. And out of that, I developed kind of a leadership principle called the Eisenhower Principle. And it's used in a variety of ways. I've thought through it myself in terms of what am I working on at any given time? Is it really urgent? Most everything I do is urgent. And then you stop and go, but is it important? And does the important inform the urgent, or does the urgent overtake the important? Because that's the tendency, is the urgent, because we get immediate satisfaction or immediate feedback on the urgent. The important, it sometimes takes a long time, but the important is what leads us to consistency with the life purpose, or why we exist, or who we are as people. Now, why do I say all that? Because you and I have a tendency, we're human, at Christmas time, that the urgent overtakes the important. Just on Friday, we had our staff party at our home, and there's a lot to prepare for, right? And so Elfie and I go through our list throughout the week of things, but then there's some things you can't do till the day of. And there's a whole list of things that we have to do. And there's this little bit of tension that starts to develop between us, because who's doing what? Because we're all going to get to it, right? There's urgency to it. And then we just stop together and we stop for just a hold on. What's important here? It's important that our team would be together tonight, that we would enjoy each other, that we would enjoy the wonder of who Jesus has allowed us to be and who he's making us to be, and the joy of serving this church. That's really what is important. And so we huddled up and hugged and said, Jesus, today, what's important is you and being together with our team tonight. And so today, would you help us throughout the day to keep our eye on what's important? Because the urgent is right here on those lists right now. And it all somehow has to get done. Might what mark us today are people who are busy but unhurried, because that's the important part. But see, it's a challenge, right? Because there's a lot of expectations from us, and those are mostly on the urgent side of things. So with that in mind, we've been thinking back a little bit over history to the kind of the original Christmas idea. Where did it all start? So let me ask you, where did Christmas start? Now, if you ask little children and grandchildren, they'll say, well, North Pole. That's where it started, for sure. But if you talk to cultural historians, they'll tell you, no, it started several hundred years before what you Christians think it started with. And it started out as a winter solstice celebration in Europe. Roman historians will tell you, it happened about 300 years after the birth and death of Jesus Christ, his resurrection, and it was a celebration of the planet Saturn and the mythic gods around that. That's when it all started. If you were to talk here in America, Ulysses S. Grant in 1870 declared Christmas a national holiday. And so you might think, well, that's when it all started for us. That's what got it kind of kicked off. But the majority of us, because most of us kind of have been raised in some kind of a religious tradition, would say, no, it happened, it all got kicked off, it started when an unmarried young couple discovered they're pregnant by the Holy Spirit in Bethlehem in southern Israel. That's where it all got kicked off a couple of thousand years ago. None of those are the right answer. You know when it started? In the Garden of Eden is where it started. You see, the moment that Adam and Eve decided to reject God's offer to live in union and communion with him forever and take the independent route where they thought, God, just hold on just a second. I think we've got this one. That tree that you said we shouldn't, well, looks like a good deal to us. I think that's what we're going to do. And they do it, and instantly bad things happen. Something enters this world that was foreign and unknown. And the moment that happened, Bethlehem was on the radar. Because God's a God who plans. He gets the important. He does, all the time. And so he knows what the human race needs. But he's marching to Bethlehem, and 30 years later or so, he's marching to Calvary and Golgotha and Gethsemane. See, it's all on the radar back then. This is how far back this goes because it's so important. What's so important? Well, we said it last week. This is a grand rescue plan, is what it is. The greatest gift is the rescue of humanity through Jesus Christ. So, God in his effort, I found this interesting. I did this thing this last week. By the way, that question of where Christmas got started, that might be a great family conversation around the table, just to see what people around the table say. So I looked at my Bible. My Bible has about 1,100 pages. That story of Adam and Eve is on page 3. 2 pages later is Noah and a flood, which God uses to try to rescue people. That's page 5. Page 10 of 1,100, we're at Abram and Sarah, this elderly couple who God says, I'm going to give you a child, and that child is going to be the start of the blessing of the whole world. We're going to rescue the whole world through you. And then over the next hundreds and thousands of years, God uses kings and priests and judges to try to rescue humanity. And then, just over 3,700 years ago, he brings a prophet onto the scene who we were introduced to last week, Isaiah. During the era and time that King Ahaz is the king of Judah. Now, I want to go back and finish the story because we didn't finish what happened to Ahaz. So if you'll hang with me, but to do that, I need to give you a little bit of an update where we were, okay? So here's the map we put up the last time. Here's where we started, actually. Matthew 1:23 and Isaiah 7:14. That's where the bridge happens, where God, by an angel in a dream to Joseph, says, you're going to have a son. But he quotes something that Isaiah said, and this is the era in which Isaiah says that. Here's a map of that area. So under David, Israel was one unified country, 12 provinces. It degrades at some point. There's a civil war, a vicious civil war that starts, and Israel is split in half. The northern 10 tribes are Israel. The bottom 2 tribes are Judah. Ahaz is the king of Judah, and Pekah is the king of Israel. Well, the king of Israel really wants to take over and unify the country once again under his kingship, but he can't do it on his own, so he goes over to Rezin, the king of Syria, and says, join me, let's attack Judah, and that's what they do. God kind of rescues them and salvages what's there, but there's still a lot of tension in this country. Because if we go now to Chronicles, where the story is told, we read this. It says, at that time, King Ahaz sent to the king of Assyria for help. Now, pause for just a second. If you looked at that map, there was a red country way at the top, little bitty little country, but it's actually the superpower of the day. Just couldn't fit it all on the map, okay? So here's what Ahaz is faced with. God comes to Ahaz and says, hey, I'm going to rescue you from those other two kings, and if you don't trust me, you can ask for any sign and I'll prove it to you. To which Ahaz says, no, I couldn't possibly bother you with that, like self-righteously. To which God says, okay, Ahaz, I'll give you my own sign then. And that's where this quote comes in. A virgin will give birth, and you give birth to a son, and you'll name him Emmanuel. To which Ahaz goes, that's awesome. I'm with you now, God. Nope, that's actually what he does. He goes to Assyria to look for help. And this is what happens. At the same time as he's doing that, it says the Edomites, which were a tribe of people south of Jerusalem, had again come and attacked Judah and carried away prisoners. While the Philistines, that's a tribe of people on the coast, had moved in and raided towns in the foothills in the Negev of Judah. So Jerusalem is surrounded. No wonder, right? Ahaz looks at the urgent. God has told him the important. I won't let this happen. A child will be born, and that's good news because that's your rescue plan. But Ahaz goes, but I'm surrounded right now. Yeah, well, this is still important. Hang in here with me. To which Ahaz says, I don't think so. The urgent has overtaken the important. I'm going to get help. And he goes to the king of Assyria and asks him to come and help. And this is what we read on. The Lord had humbled Judah because of Ahaz, the king of Israel. Well, only humbled him to the point where he recognized he was in trouble, not humbled enough to ask for God to help him, for he had promoted wickedness in Judah and had been most unfaithful to the Lord. Yes, he had. Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came to him. So he invited him to come, but he gave him trouble instead of help. See, what Ahaz was convinced of was that the king of Assyria would come and rescue him, but instead the king had this in mind, the king of Assyria, yeah, I'll rescue you, but it's going to cost you. This is a protection for hire deal, Ahaz. I'm not coming free of charge. I want something from you. Ultimately, what he wants is to take over. Surprise, surprise. This is what happens. He moves in from Assyria with his army through the northern part of Syria, through Israel, and he's going to come rescue. Only thing is, he doesn't rescue. He makes it very difficult for Ahaz. Let's read on. So this is Ahaz's response. He took some things from the temple of the Lord and from the royal palace and from the princes and presented them to the king of Assyria. He's paying him off now, right? But what's he paying him off with? Not pocket change, not a little bit of cash he's got in the family safe. No, he's got a garage sale of the temple stuff going on. Stuff that Moses had been given direct instruction by God how to make it, what to make it of, the size, how precious it was, how it was going to be utensils and tools to worship the King of all kings, the God of the universe, Yahweh. And Ahaz thinks there's cash value in that. I'm selling that stuff off. I'm going to give it to him. But it didn't help him. In his time, King Ahaz became even more unfaithful to the Lord. How do you become more unfaithful than that? Well, this is how you do that. He offered sacrifices to the gods of Damascus. Yeah, that's not a good thing. Who had defeated him, for he thought, here's his logic, since the gods of the king of Aram have helped them, those are the gods to the northern countries who swept in, I will sacrifice to them rather than the God who has given me the important. Here's the urgent, for they will help me, but they were his downfall and the downfall of Israel. Could it get much worse than that? Actually, it could. This is what he does. Ahaz gathered together the furnishings of the temple of God, and he took them away. Get this, he shut the doors of the Lord's temple, and he set up altars in every street corner in Jerusalem. Bad advice. But this is the power of the urgent to take over the important. We would all look at Ahaz and go, dude, bad call. Really bad call. Shouldn't have done that. That's just gonna go badly for you. We can predict that, right? Stick with the important. Stick with what God has. And then Christmas rolls along. And it's so easy to forget the important of what this season is, what it celebrates. And this urgent just leaks in. We don't mean for it. It's good stuff. A lot of what's wrong with giving gifts? Nothing. What's wrong with delighting ourselves in excellent food? Nothing. What's wrong with some time off from work to rest and hang out with the family? Nothing. These are good things. I think Ahaz could argue, well, it was a good thing to invite Assyria because they're stronger and they protect. But we look at it and go, no, don't do that. But I would encourage all of us to step back and go, what is really important about Christmas? Knowing that these good things, and some not so good, tend to invade and infiltrate that. Well, this is, as we read on, this is what we know about Ahaz. In every town in Judah, he built high places to burn sacrifices to other gods and provoked the Lord, the God of his fathers, in anger. Next slide, if we can put that up. When men tell you to consult mediums and spiritists, this is now Isaiah coming along to him. It's the end of Chronicles. It's the start of Isaiah. Now this is the word that Isaiah says to Ahaz. Look at Ahaz. I want to tell you that when you consult with mediums and spiritists who worship and mutter, should not the people inquire of God? Is that not more important, Ahaz? Is that not really the crux of this? Why consult the dead on behalf of the living? Why do that? Then they will look toward the earth and see only distress and darkness and fearful gloom, and they will be thrust into utter darkness. We can look at Ahaz and we can say, because you're so focused on this urgent thing, there's gloom coming because you're missing the important, the really important. Now, Ahaz has got gloom in his world, right? I mean, it's dark. It's really not a good place for he and his whole country. Our gloom might be different than that. It may not feel quite as urgent as what his gloom was, but we have some gloom. Can I tell you, after a couple of years of COVID, there's a little gloom, right? When Omicron comes along, we go, oh my goodness, isn't that the 5th or 6th or 15th version of this thing? When does it end? When does it end? And we get uptight and we get irritated. I went to Michael's the other day. Guys, I don't shop at Michael's, so I didn't lose my man card. Okay, just trust me. I went for Elfie. And I'm in the aisle where, did you know that you can get little rocks and sand to fill containers and you stick flowers in them and it weights it? Did you know that? It's really cool. So then there's all this stuff, and there's a woman beside me shopping for a Christmas wreath, okay? She wants to hang it up on her door, and she's pulled this hanger off the wall that's got a loop and then 2 discs at the top. And she is clearly frustrated. There is an urgency to get a wreath hanger, and she can't find the one that she wants. And she's muttering and she's growling, and I'm just insensitive enough to engage her, right? Go, what have you got there? She says, I don't know. And then you see a few expletives. What is this? It's got 2 discs. It should have a hook on the top. I said, ma'am, I think those might be magnets. I don't know about this stuff, but I think those might be magnets. Well, what in the is that for? Yeah, I think maybe I don't know, I'm making stuff up now, right? Maybe it's meant to hang it on fabric. You put one magnet here and you put the other one behind it, and well, that's a stupid idea. I said, yeah, I know, probably, but I'm trying, right? I'm really trying. Now it's time to go, because this could quickly become a retail aisle fight, right? Gloves off. So I exit, I go to the checkout, and guess who's right in front of me? It's her. And now I'm thinking, do we talk or don't we talk? Yeah, we talk. And so I said, hey, I saw you found the right hanger. She says, I did. Thank you very much for your help. I said, I didn't really do anything. Oh, you did? She says, I've got to figure it out. It's that hanger with the magnets on the top. It's to put it on glass. Brilliant, right? So the hook, get the magnet with the glass between us. Dad, you're so smart. She came, I suspect, in my imagination, to get a piece of Christmas decoration to bless her family or whoever's coming over, or maybe just her own personal thing, right? But in the middle of that, the urgency infiltrated that, and we would go, oh, oops, there's a better way, there's a different way. So there's a bit of gloom in her world. There's national gloom, there's personal gloom for us in different stages, in different ways. There's fear, that's gloomy. There's the fear of inflation. There's the fear of, will this virus ever go away? There's fear, depending on what side of this equation you are. There's fear of getting the vaccination because of what might be there. And then there's a fear that not enough people will get the vaccination and it would just continue to replicate. And depending on where you're at on that, and that brings some gloom. Politicians who can't get their stuff together and just do something for the sake of the country, not themselves. There's immigration problems. There's supply chain problems. Do you know that you can't get the Squishmallow Kennedy, the unicorn ultra plush toy with the rainbow hair? You can't get that. I got a grandchild who's going to be very disappointed if we don't get one of those, right? Gloom of all kinds. However, our gloom may not be what Ahaz is, but there's a sense of gloom, and God has an answer for Ahaz. It's a one-word answer, and this is the one word: nevertheless. In spite of the gloom, in spite of what's happening, in spite of the sadness, the worry, the fear, the concern, whether it's national or personal or whatever it is, in spite of all that, nevertheless, yes, it is that way, nevertheless what? There will be no more gloom. Something's going to change for those who were in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. Just quickly, those are the two northern provinces that when Syria came down, they were the first to experience the brunt of that invasion. But in the future, he will honor Galilee of the Gentiles, that's that area, by the way of the sea along the Jordan. The people walking in the darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. What's Isaiah saying to Ahaz? This doesn't happen in Ahaz's day, but this is what he's saying. Yes, it's gloom. Yes, part of it, maybe all of it is you, Ahaz, but you have a whole bunch of citizens that got in trouble because of something you did, so it's kind of universal gloom whether you're responsible for it or not. But I'm telling you, there's a great light coming. There's a great light coming. Darkness will suddenly be lit up, to which Ahaz looks at it and probably goes, all right, we're going to win the battle. Assyria is going to change their mind. They're going to come and they're going to become my friend, and they're going to take over those other two countries, and this is all going to work out great, and my throne's going to be preserved, and we're going to be successful as a nation. And once again, God, you're going to turn the circumstances for you. That's what you're going to do. That's the great light, right? Or for us, we think, well, somehow or other, this virus is just going to implode on itself and disappear. That would be great light. Or the economy will stabilize, or we'll be able to find the Squishmallow toy, like whatever the light would be. We put it. Hold on. The light, we think, is the change in circumstances. But that's not the case. It's way, way better than that. Here's what it is. For what? For this. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given. And we have the privilege and the advantage that Ahaz didn't have to look back a couple of thousand years and go, that child that was born was God himself, born in a human body without losing one bit of his deity. He somehow found a way to compress his divinity into an embryo, and then 9 months later, a little baby boy, and then a young man, and then an adult. And this is the light. It's a person. It's not a change in circumstances. Tell me, in the light of that, what's important? It's that story that's important. All these other things, they're cool. They're okay. They're just not important. They're fun and they're good and beneficial in some ways. To excess, they're not. But we like Ahaz can so easily drift to the urgent and miss the fact that a child is born and a son is given. And who is he? This is who he is. The government, that means the reign, the decision-making, the authority is going to rest on him. It's going to be on his shoulders. And these are his superpowers. For example, he's a wonderful counselor. He's a mighty God. He's an everlasting Father, and he is the Prince of Peace. Now, you go to Marvel, they don't actually pick those 4 as superpowers. They got a spider that squirts webs, right? They got Superman that can fly. They've got a guy that can just disappear. Another guy can breathe underwater. I mean, there's all kinds, but none of them have this superpower, wonderful counselor. What's your power? I'm a wonderful counselor. Really? What do? I just give people the best possible advice they could ever get in their life, and if they ever would follow it, it's going to lead to life and life to the full. Okay, that's a pretty cool superpower. Do you need a little advice? Do you need a little counsel? Yep. But you need the right counsel. You need the right information. And here we have not just a counselor, but a wonderful. Actually, if you take the Hebrew word, it's the miraculously beyond description wonderful counselor who always tells the truth. If Jesus set up a counseling office in your neighborhood and you decided that you needed to go get a counselor, which I have, was so helpful for me a couple of years ago. You walk in, and Jesus introduces himself, and you begin to explain the trouble you have with your boss. He's actually able to stop and go, you don't need to tell me. I know. I also know how you responded to him. So let's sit and talk, because it's all in the open. And I will be a wonderful counselor who will give you guidance that's sure. He's a wonderful counselor. He's mighty God. Okay, there's a good superpower, right? That's authority. That's power. That's might. Yeah, it's what makes his wonderful counseling so beautiful, because he has the authority of a mighty God. But then the next one is really important. He's an everlasting Father. He's not a mighty God in a dictatorial, diabolical kind of way. He has the kingship, and he acts as though he's the Father in a fatherly way. Now, if you've had a great dad, you're all over that one. That's fantastic. I remember a neighbor of mine across the street from me. We had loved him and cared for him and spent time with him, wanted so much for him to experience the love of Christ. After 7 years, finally he came over to our home one Saturday. We were cleaning out our garage, and he says, hey, stuff's happened in the last week. I need help. And so we were able to come alongside him, and he said, hey, do you have a Bible? He said, no, I don't. I just never really had an interest in it. I went and bought him a Bible and gave him a Bible. A month later, there's a doorbell ring on our door, and there is Jim on the other side of the door holding his Bible across his chest. He said, Jim, what's up, buddy? He said, I just read something here. Is this real? I said, what did you read, Jim? I read that God is my Father, and I have the best dad in the whole world. He's amazing. He's walked with me. He's cared for me. He provided for me. He corrected me. He mentored me. I just look up to him. Is God like that? I go, yeah, Jim. God's an everlasting Father. And it would be that day and that moment that he would give his life to Jesus and experience it, not just hear about it, experience it. He's a wonderful Father. He's Prince of Peace. We need peace in our world. We need peace in our hearts. And the provider, the giver, the grantor of that important thing is the King of the universe, Jesus the Christ. He not only brings peace with God by his death on the cross, so that all our independence and all of the things we've done are paid for himself. So that's peace from God. Remember, we were separated from God because of Adam and Eve's deal, and if they hadn't, we would have. But we've got peace with God. And then when you say yes to Jesus, you get the peace of God who reigns in you. And those things that worried you and concerned you just don't do that quite so much anymore. The stress and the fret of the urgent suddenly becomes clearer because the peace of the important is being communicated inside of you. And then one day, we're going to have peace from God across the whole world and into eternity. This is the Prince of Peace. And this is the one who comes to us and goes, what are you going to do this Christmas? The urgent will be there. You can't avoid it. You can't go around it. It's there. But the way to defeat it, the way to put it in its place, the way to put it in the right order is not just to put it there and go, we're not going to do it this year. We're not going to spend as much, eat as much, be as busy as much. That's one tactic. Or another tactic is this, God, we're going to worship you this Christmas because you're what's important. You are. You're the Prince of Peace. You're the mighty God. You're the everlasting Father. You are the wonderful Counselor. And if you'll help us here, that's going to be put in its right order. It will be. I promise you that. You know who knows that firsthand? Is a young woman named Mary, who gets this incredible visit from an angel and says, Mary, you're going to have a baby boy, and he's going to be wonderful. To which that must have been, in some ways, good news, because Mary didn't know, like tomorrow? Like 9 months from now? Or 10 years from now? He's going to save his people. And then it starts to become clear to her that this is like a big deal. And she's got this kind of decision to make, I think. The urgent is, oh my goodness, my reputation. Oh my goodness, what's Joseph going to think? Oh my goodness, what are my parents going to do? Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Oh, nevertheless, I am going to do what the option in front of me from God is. May it be to me as you have said. That's the important. Now, Jesus, would you this Christmas keep our eyes on you? May we make a decision, maybe even this morning, or maybe around the lunch table today, or with our circle of friends or our family, wherever we find ourselves, to have this conversation. What's really important this Christmas? To talk together. Might we have the courage to make an advanced decision before the urgent overwhelms us, to get the important squared away? You'll help us with that because the important is you. The important is you. So this Christmas, may we experience the wonder of who you are. May we do that, Jesus, for the wonder of your great name and the joy of this great season. Amen.